So I woke up this morning and I was scrolling Twitter and I came across this tweet from Dan Bilzerian that seems to have everybody in an outrage. He tweeted out yesterday saying, after smoking for 33 years, I can tell you with absolute certainty that weed makes you dumber, less confident, and it hurts your sleep. Weed is addictive, and of all the drugs I've done, and I've done a lot, weed was the worst for me and hardest to quit. Shrooms in nature is good. That is all. Now, I don't think this is going to be a very long video, but I just wanted to give my experience because I did smoke weed for like 20 plus years. I quit for a year from February of 2023 till sometime into 2024. And I do have a little pen now that I smoke a little bit at night before I go to sleep, but I don't really even need it. Like, I just do it because that light high feeling is just nice. Like, I can sleep perfectly fine with or without it, but I have been through a lot when it comes to smoking weed. I went from using it as a tool, which it made me more creative. I felt like it helped me write music, and just a lot of good things came from it initially. Then I started to smoke by myself at my house, and shit just started to get a little bit out of control. Fast forward all these years later, I started smoking 4 to 5 blunts a night before I went to sleep. I'd roll all 4 or 5 of them up, put them in a mason jar, make it airtight, that way they don't get ruined, and I would just go one by one by one, smoke them back to back to back, never put them out, never took a break between it. I would literally smoke all 4 or 5 blunts right after each other. It was the dumbest and craziest thing I probably have ever done. It's a waste of money, a waste of time. I got no benefit from it. Like, it just became a thing where I started to smoke weed before every single thing I did. And if I didn't smoke, didn't really want to go do anything. Like, it killed my drive. Now, is this the experience of everybody? No. This is the experience of somebody like myself who has poor self-control, and I let the shit get out of hand. Because in the beginning, it was very helpful. I thought it was an amazing tool. Now, I don't think that it made me dumber. I don't think that it hurt my sleep because I slept fine on weed. I slept fine without weed. Even after 20 plus years of smoking before bed, I slept perfectly fine after I quit. So I don't think that that's the case. I also don't think that it hurt my confidence, but that might be his experience. And that's one thing that I think we all have to take into account, including him, is that these things are something that are going to be different for each person. Everyone is a little bit different. Back in the day, I even used to do some coke. I'm not going to lie to you. And I would do it sometimes for a couple weeks at a time with friends, and some of them would have a hard time stopping. They would keep seeking it out, and I would just quit and be perfectly fine with it. Now, I'm not saying that it isn't addicting, but for me, for whatever reason, it just didn't really affect me like that, whereas other people had that issue. So as far as addiction goes, as far as your experience and how you think it made you feel, I think that's going to be a little bit different for every single person. Now, there is one thing I do want to talk about that I can't say 100% is proven, but I did have some medical issues that I do feel came from weed. And after talking with my doctor about it, I think we came to the same conclusion. And I ended up having some, like, I guess, low-key heart problems. It wasn't as bad as they initially thought, but I went and got every test under the sun done. And the reason why is because towards the end of me smoking weed, I was getting palpitations. It would feel like my heart was skipping a beat, or like when you go over the roller coaster and your stomach like drops. I was getting that randomly as I would smoke weed. And so obviously that made me a little bit nervous, and so I quit. But when I quit, the palpitations were still there, and it felt like my heart would not stop racing, which is really weird because when I was still smoking weed, it would race for like a couple hours after I smoked, which is totally normal. Your heart rate does go up when you smoke weed, but then it would level out. And I was going to the doctor and stuff. My blood pressure was fine. My heart rate was fine. But as soon as I quit, it was literally around 100 to 105 BPM every single day, and nothing would change it. I could be sitting here completely relaxed. It would be beating like crazy. I'd go for a walk. Like, no matter what I did, it was bad. And so my doctor actually sent me to a cardiologist just to make sure everything was okay. They did the Holter monitor for 24 hours. I had to wear something. I did the treadmill uphill for however long so they can test me under stress. I did a CT scan, an ultrasound. And when they did the CT scan, they also tested to see if there was any calcium in my arteries to try to figure out why this was happening. And slowly but surely, it went back down to a normal heart rate. But while they did all those tests, at first, with the ultrasound, they determined that my ejection fraction was like 46%. And most people probably have no idea what this is, but it's just a function of the heart, and it should not be that low. Thankfully, it's something that can be corrected unless it gets too low. So they put me on a certain medication. They told me to take care of myself, eat, work out, all the things that you would normally do to stay healthy, and that it could go back up to a normal level. Now, when they did the CT scan, it did appear to be above 50%, which is good, but they still felt it was lower than it should have been for my age. So they still told me, keep taking the medication, keep working out, keep doing all the things that you should do, and it should improve and get better, which is a great thing. So I'm very happy that that was the case. But then we started to try to figure out why was my heart having this issue in the first place? Now, I was probably asked at least 20 times if I drink energy drinks or have a lot of caffeine every single day. So anybody that's constantly chugging energy drinks, I just want to let you know that cardiologists are concerned that in the future, they're going to have a ton more patients because of the fact that energy drinks are so bad for your heart and people are drinking them as excessively as they are. So just keep that in mind. I'm not trying to scare you. You might be completely fine now, but as you get older, it's just something that you might want to get in check. Now, I was not drinking energy drinks. I didn't drink coffee at the time. I literally had no connection to caffeine. I wasn't even drinking soda anymore. I was just drinking water. So we could not figure out why this was happening to my heart. And the only thing that made possible sense was the weed itself. And I told him about me smoking blunts, and there's tobacco leaf involved in that, which could kind of cause an addiction and maybe cause other issues. But when I do the calculations, it's like 1 or 2 cigarettes a day. And it doesn't even include the actual cigarette leaf, which has all the chemicals in it. And so they didn't think that that was part of the problem. And they thought there was no way that that would be causing what I was experiencing. But they did feel like there's a chance that my excessive weed smoke could have been the reason, because of the fact that it does raise your heart rate. It does mess with the electrical system in your body, and doing that every day for a long period of time could have led to this issue. But they did admit that there's not been enough studies done to really say one way or the other. And I think that that's where we kind of get confused, because we can Google and see that there's been no deaths attributed to weed. And so we're like, it's the most miracle drug in the world. It helps me with all these issues, and there's literally no downside. But I feel like that's where it gets a little bit tricky, because if, let's just say, I continue to smoke, right? And that was what was lowering my ejection fraction, and it continues to go down. And then one day in the future, I'm out doing something and I have a heart attack. They're not going to attribute that to weed. They're just going to say, wow, he had a problem with his heart and he had a heart attack. And so there's never going to be a listing online that says weed caused this man's death. And so I feel like we just kind of don't understand exactly what the possibilities are over long term, because it's never been studied. And we just assume, well, it's the most miracle drug in the world. Why would you say that it causes anything? There's nothing that says that. But that's kind of where you've got to be careful. Because of the fact that we haven't studied it does not mean that it can't potentially cause problems. And I'm not saying it's going to cause it with everybody. If you smoke weed, I'm not here trying to tell you that you're writing your death sentence. A lot of people have smoked weed their whole life and they're perfectly fine. I think it was more so the way in which I decided to do it. I was not very active. I'm sitting here every night, smoking them back to back to back to back, smoking like 5 grams or more in one sitting in like 2 hours. And I'm doing this every day for years. There's not a lot of people that sit and do that every single night. Most people, they hit a bong, maybe they smoke a blunt, they smoke a joint. Like it's way less than what I was smoking. And I'm sure that you're probably going to be fine because you're not doing it and abusing the drug, basically, whereas I was. And so all I'm trying to say is that there is negatives to it. It's no different than if I drink a cup of water right now, it's great for me. But if I sit here and I chug water until I literally can't, I may drink an amount that ends up making it toxic, even though water is one of the best things for us. And we can't even go a whole week without water or we would die. So you just have to keep that in mind, that every good thing potentially has a downside. And there's no reason to get offended by it because you're like, well, I love weed. I'm a weed advocate. It's only done good for me. So how dare you talk about it? That's not the mentality to have. You should just say, hey, my experience with weed has been a good one. Obviously, you can turn a tool into a crutch. You could also turn a tool into the weapon that kills you. You've just got to be very careful and don't let it take over your life. That is what I did, and that was my mistake. And he may have done the same thing. Maybe that's why he's having bad results from it. I really don't know. But to say that he's completely wrong and that this drug is just this miracle drug and there's nothing wrong with it is, to me, the craziest shit ever. Like, you cannot go about it saying that because you're misleading people just as much as I feel like the way he put it kind of misled people as well, because he's making it seem like this is what it's going to do for everybody. And that's just not the case. It's not going to be the same experience for everyone. And so I just wanted to talk about that really quick. I don't even know how well put together this is because I didn't plan it. I never plan any of my videos. I don't script them. I don't come up with talking points, which is why you end up with cuts, because I will mess up what I'm saying and then I just jump back into it. And so I got to cut little parts out. But curious what you guys think down below. I'll catch you in the next one, homies.